Yate Susan Hudson Nisle. Ki ani Nisle, Dishini Basha Shin Tabaha Dasha Che Nakaidenet Dashanali. I'm from She's based in Mexico, the great Navajo nations, and I like to thank the indigenous peoples whose ancestral lands were upon. I wanted to talk about my quilt. On the boarding school. It's called The Beginning of the End. And it's part of the Herd Museum's boarding school exhibit in Phoenix, Arizona. When they first talked to me about the quilt, they kind of told me what they wanted, but they gave me free reins on it because if they wanted it structured how they wanted it, I don't do that because I do it in my spiritual way. I do it with the dreams. I do it with the hearing, the crying, and going to certain places, and I can see the quilt. I can start seeing it coming together. So I have that gift. So they allowed me to do that, and it was kind of hard for me at sometimes because spiritually and mentally, because my mother had cancer and she didn't live to see the finishing of the quilt or to the exhibit. And you'll see on the bottom I call them the six. They were brothers and sisters, and they lived with my great grandmother, and they went to Toilina boarding school. So that's where I got a lot of my stories from, is when they would tell me a lot of their experience. And so they would talk about how when they were little, they would go and they would get their mouths washed out with soap and water if they spoke our beautiful language. In the cutting of the hair, and they would just be shocked because they would just cut their hair, and sometimes it would be so close to the scalp that it would be bleeding. And I wanted to document as much as I could on that one. And the clothing, and you go in there and you have your clothing on, and they strip it away. Your beautiful clothing, I mean, colorful. If you look like at my shirt and you look at some of the pictures, how beautiful our clothes are, and how they would take that all away and put us, I call it the little house on the prairie look, the ugly clothes. And put them in those clothes and the shoes that didn't fit. And they were just beaten if they didn't give up their clothes, and they're beaten if they didn't want to wear the clothes. And also another hard part was you walked in with whatever indigenous language whatever indigenous tribe you were from, and you had these beautiful names. If you look at some of the names, they're beautiful, beautiful names. And they would take those names away and go, and they were trying to destroy our identity. And they would go and they would give them a new name. They would have sometimes a rope, and they had the slate boards, and they would have a new name there. And there were supposedly Christian names, or they gave you a piece of paper and then you had this name. Can you imagine all of a sudden someone's calling you your name, your new name, and you didn't know what that name was, and then you got beaten for that? And then the mental abuse, the physical abuse, the sexual abuse that these children went through. We now have intergenerational trauma. So I thank you, Quilt Alliance, for letting me speak a few minutes on my quilt. Okay.